It is a real pleasure to be here with you today, and it's an honor to moderate this debate. We're going to talk about culture and sports, and it is not easy to conciliate all these themes, but I know the panel that will be with me is going to make a very good conversation with these themes. So I ask to join me in the stage, please, Professor António Feijó. He is the chairman of Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation. Thank you very much. Also, Diana Gomes Pedras, chairman of the Olympic Athletes Commission from Portugal. Thank you very much, Diana. It's also a pleasure to have you here. Also, the Portuguese composer Luís Tinoco, that has been rewarded as Prémio Pessoa very recently, in the last week. Thank you very much, also joining. Yes, you can please sit, and we will manage the conversation during the conversation. And also, Rahim Lakhani is the president and CEO of Lakhani Group Portugal. Thank you very much, and very welcome to this panel. Well, it is not easy to talk about arts, music, sports, culture, tourism, but we know that all of this makes part of our society. We know that culture and sports play a crucial role in international diplomacy and fostering goodwill and collaboration among nations. We know also that global events such as the Olympic World Cup, international film and music festivals, institutions like UNESCO, FIFA, and the International Olympic Committee, these institutions and these events shape the cultural and sports diplomacy. We know also that we need this kind of events to impact on our GDP, on our exports, and we know that these different themes, beginning in the arts and music and going to sports and culture, we know that these shape our society. So it is important also to unite nations and inspire people, as the theme of this panel, especially in the times we are living. So I would start with Professor António Feijó. We know that the Gulbenkian Foundation has a long tradition in supporting culture in Portugal. What is the role of community arts in promoting inclusion and diversity? Because it's a long effort that Gulbenkian has made in Portugal in this area.
Well, thank you for the invitation to be here. And maybe I would start with some anecdotal evidence by referring to one or two cases in which this is visible.
Two examples of what you have done
Yes.
in the last years.
One of the most interesting ones, I think, is I recently, as president of the foundation, was asked to assist to watch a performance given by a particular cast of people. That is, we have a program which supports the prison inmates, in this particular case in Leiria, and the prison inmates stage an opera at the foundation. The performers make up for an interesting collection, because there are some of the inmates can be on stage, whereas some others can't because of their imprisonment conditions. They have to stay put. And what you see them is through a video performance. Now, if you go to watch these, you expect your heart is in the right place, this is a thing to do, but you don't expect much from the performance. Now, the performance was extraordinary, extremely moving, and of a quality which really was on par with a professional performance anywhere. And suddenly you realize...
It was more real, more...
Actually, at the artistic level, it was indistinguishable from what you'd get from a professional performance. And this is quite remarkable. Then you think, of course, in Portugal, prison conditions are a bit like myself, in the sense
It
that
happens, it can happen.
if you read European reports on prison conditions in Portugal, the conditions are dismal. They are some of the worst in Europe. And then you realize maybe the prison population deserves this sort of thing, and it's a great way of instilling self-respect and dignity on these people.
So it's part of the role of the foundation, the integration and using the art as a form of integration also.
Yes. And actually, we have raised this to a level in which we are now doing with 9 other foundations, that is 8 other foundations in Europe, we are doing a program of the civic role of the arts, the extension of art to groups, communities which are underprivileged and usually don't have access to this. And so with the King Baldwin Foundation in Brussels, with La Caixa, with Cariplo in São Paulo in Italy, 2 of the largest, if not the largest, the 2 largest foundations in Italy, and some others, Moleskine, for example. We are doing our program across Europe in which all of these will have a role and an impact.
You're also talking about another example that you have besides that of the first one that you took.
Yeah. Well, the other example I thought, since I was invited to this panel, and I realized that the panel was on culture and sports, and I thought, well, this is a strange bedfellows to me, because I really don't know what to say about sports. That is, in my private capacity, I have a lot to say about sports, but not in my public capacity. But in any case, as any Portuguese person has a lot to say on sports. But I thought that there is an historical interesting occasion in the history of the foundation that I think it's worth mentioning. And that is, in 1966, the Gulbenkian Foundation inaugurated in Baghdad, in Iraq, the Olympic Stadium, the sports stadium. And the great Benfica team with Eusébio went at our cost, went to Baghdad, where they played against the Iraqi national team. I'm pleased to say we won, but this is also one of the occasions in which sometimes this difficult bridge between sports and culture is actually passed, and you can do it.
What was the most defining thing that you have when you entered in a foundation like Gulbenkian? It has a long history, and it's also a weight in your shoulder. So, what was the most defining thing that you find when you entered in, knowing that it has a very special role in the society?
Well, that's a very good question, in the sense that if I talk about my personal position. I remember that one day I went to the Calouste Gulbenkian Museum, and of course the Calouste Gulbenkian Museum has recently gave an award to one of the greatest photographers in the world, the German Thomas Struth, and he came to Lisbon and he said, he went to the museum, he was there for 3 hours, and he came out and he said, this is one of the greatest museums I've ever seen, and he has a sequence of museum pieces. And I heard that you are now going to refurbish the museum, which we are. And he said, please don't touch it. It's extraordinary. Now, why am I saying this? Because one day I went to the museum on my own, just at lunch, after lunch. And I went into the museum and I looked at some of the collection pieces, the Rembrandts, the Rubens that Gulbenkian bought from Stalin in 1927. And as I was walking, I said, this is a huge responsibility, and it's on our shoulders, the board's shoulders. We have to be at the level of what I see here. And that is a great responsibility. So when I read coming in that motto that you have in this school about responsibilities, and I realized that is a large weight on a board member's shoulders. You have to be at the level of what you see there. And what you see there is world class. Actually, this is not, I'm not just, how to say, this is not boasting. This is just a very sober appraisal. This is what we have. This is one of the great institutions of its kind in the world. As you can see, if you go, for instance, as I do, to Europe, to meetings with heads of the large foundations, and their deference towards the Gulbenkian Foundation is clear and comes out of nearly 70 years of history in which we really did a lot of work and a lot of good things.
Thank you, Professor. Diana, besides culture and the arts, we know that the global events like the Olympic Games are very important in reshaping and in terms of contributing to the social progress and kind of diplomacy also. You have been in the last games, but you were always also an athlete in the past. The Olympic Games are the biggest events in the world and are recognized for stimulating diplomatic ties, as I was saying, promoting goodwill and international collaboration. How did you feel as an Olympic athlete, the experience of being in this event and first time? When you were an athlete, and in this time in Paris this year, when you were representing all the Portuguese athletes.
Sure. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Diana, and thank you to all the panel. I think it might be the most amazing panel where I've been participating on. And I was hearing you talk, and I was thinking, how is Diana going to jump on the Olympic sport?
It's not easy. I'm trying to understand
myself. How is she
myself.
going to manage this? No, so you are. Thank you so much for having us here. So as you said, I was an Olympic athlete, and I qualified very, very young. I was only 14 years old.
You were a swimmer.
I was a swimmer, yes. And I went to my first Olympic Games as an athlete 20 years ago. And there in Athens, I had my first glimpse of the Olympic world when I was only 14. And I think the view I had from the Olympic movement and the Olympic spirit there was very, very naive, very pure.
You're very young. It was kind of a
Yes.
dream also.
I don't think I ever dreamt of being an Olympic athlete or a swimmer. I always dreamt to be a ballerina and an architect.
Wow.
And suddenly swimming just came up and I qualified for the Olympics and the passion was born there. So there in the Olympic Village, I was sharing the space where the Olympic athletes sleep and eat, and they are all together in the same area, where is a safe place for saying. And
What was the image that you were expecting when you arrived there?
I'm not sure what I was expecting there.
A space where different people from different countries
It was
share and but also compete.
Your experience there was pretty amazing. I remember coming out of our building where Portugal was settled, and coming out in the back of our garden, there was New Zealand. They were all the time practicing the haka. And then we continued walking for the dining hall, and I remember seeing athletes praying, turn to Mecca, for example. They were just practicing their religious practices. And I remember being in the Olympic dining hall, just eating next to Asian athletes, for example, having breakfast. Completely different from my own. It was salty food like rice and vegetables. And I was like, this is amazing. This is a dream. This is brilliant. We all are sharing the same space. We all respect each other. We are all connected. And of course, the problems are being left outside because we are all with the same purpose here. We are going to compete. We are going to be the best selves of ourselves, and just that. But of course, the Olympic Village, it was, and it is, kind of a bubble for the Olympic movement and for the sport itself. And regarding the responsibility of being an ambassador for your country, I think we have to separate the image that the athletes have in the context of the Olympic Games from the manipulation that often happens in sport. And
what you want to say with that, so let us just understand.
Let me just approach this
Yes.
lightly, because there are dangers when there is manipulation for the athletes, and sports, unfortunately, can be object of bad intentions, and to demonstrate other things where the athlete himself seems to be dissipated and it disappears. It's just an object also there. And sometimes the athletes don't even realize what they are representing there, so because they are made up to be puppets on the game from other people. And
Because sports became kind of a weapon, also a
in some
diplomatic
cases,
weapon.
The Olympics, fortunately, are protected by many things, and of course the ideology of the spirit of the Olympics are protected there, and I will jump on that after, about the view that I had in Paris. It was totally different. Of course, I woke up, the view that I had as an athlete was very naive, was very pure. I was there just doing that, just feeling the moment. And then in Paris, everything was different. We felt a lot of security around us. I was always feeling safe because there were so many police everywhere.
Because it was a test for the French government also. It was
For
a political
everything,
question.
For everything. I remember walking around inside the Olympic Village just to feel it again. And everything was different. We had cameras everywhere. We had hiding securities everywhere. Of course, the tag buildings there were highly protected. Of course, we were feeling we are safe, but at the same time, it was weird to feel that security so close. Nothing happened, fortunately.
And the sense that you had that the first time you went to the Olympics, you had a vision that was a kind of naive, and now you had a different vision when you went to Paris. It was just your age and your vision that changed, or do you think that the world also changed a lot?
Yes, I think the world changed a lot. And of course, I'm not blaming the social media or the internet or whatever, but we are accessing information much more faster than 20 years ago. Everything is closer to our fingers, and we can have fake news, and we have manipulation of information. So it's much easier now that things run out of our hands. Yeah, I think that might have changed.
Luís, we were talking about sports and the spirit of the Olympics. Then we're going to the music, and particularly one kind of music that you dedicate your time to, which is not one of the most viewed, the most commercial music, but it is a part important of the cultural movement and the musical movement. When you won the prize last week, I'm trying to get my notes again because I would like to quote you right. You said in some way it was not in that week, but it was some pieces that were made with your last interviews when the prize was announced, that you chose the hardest path. Why is that? Why do you see? Is it so hard to be in one part of the music that is not the most listened or the most approached or the most common? Is it the difficult way that you were talking about?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me and for being with such a group of honorable people. And thank you also for being here listening to us. I should say that the way you stated your question reflects the reason why probably I said that I chose the difficult part, because there is always this tendency to connect the artistic production with some kind of payback. Mm-hmm. You even said...
The return.
Return, exactly. Mm-hmm. Like this idea of economically, probably the music that you are involved with is not the music that is going to have a big football stadium.
It's not going to sell in
exactly.
some way.
But for me, that was never the point. And I think that when we discuss these issues, based on the ground of the economical aspect that is also present, of course, but it's not the core of researching science, religion, art. So we use these ways of expressing of ourselves because we are looking for something that I hope it's bigger than the amount of people in a football stadium.
You used to say also that the art is a way of overcoming the...
Absolutely. And Professor Feijó just mentioned a very interesting aspect, because we were backstage saying, what do we have to do with sports, or what do sports have to do with us? How are they going to solve the issue of putting us together, talking about this issue? And I think, to put in context, the first thing is, normally in art, for example, taking music as an example, we don't ask a musician, are you going to reach the final bar of the music faster than the other guy in the orchestra section?
In how many seconds?
Exactly. How many seconds do you take to play that Beethoven sonata? I play it faster. Or I play higher pitches than you because you jump high. Yeah, okay, I sing high. So this kind of competition that is kind of a part of sports is something that normally in art we do not have. And when people have that, then it's a total disaster, because then you see the artists trying to sing the higher pitch or the faster rhythm and so on. So that is not the purpose. The purpose is to really do something that probably it's for the common good. It's for the individual expression of what we have to say, if we have anything to say at all, but then it's something that we believe that can serve. And Professor Feijó just brought a very interesting story, because actually we are somehow connected with that, because the project with the prisoners that the Gulbenkian has been developing for the past years, I witnessed the first year when actually in the first stage they were staging Mozart operas. And even the director of the prison was one of the singers singing with the prisoners. So it was really amazing. And then they gave the next step to ask young composers to write the music for this project. So all the young people that have been writing for this project, they somehow were connected with the school where I'm teaching. And we selected, when we were asked to advise names, those students that we knew that they were not probably focused on victory or getting faster. We know to identify, to spot those that are doing music for the sake of the music and also for the sake of changing people's lives and changing their own lives, because you said something that is absolutely true. The prisoners and their families, they were in ecstasy, not literally, I mean, but also the composers, they were feeling exactly the same experience. They were so happy. For them, it was something, okay, I can make music not only to have my string quartet played by this big quartet in this big hall of the Gulbenkian or so on. No, they were making music to make a difference.
Given new capacities and the...
Absolutely, yeah.
So, using that idea that you were talking about, and as a composer, how do you feel that what potential do cultural activities such as music, such as dance, such as art have to inspire children and adults? You're talking about that product also, that the world to learn about the respect other cultures and the necessity of integrate people that are different from the common part.
If you allow me, I'm going to be more ambitious. I think the quality of our democracy depends on this as well. That's why I don't like to bring this conversation to an economic ground discussion. I think this is something that is essential as is education or healthcare or whatever.
And culture has a part on that.
Absolutely. If you give that to children, and if you, so to speak, train them to be more demanding, to be more critical, more self-critical, to demand more that is not just the soap on TV or the football stadium. I have nothing against football stadiums, but something that goes behind that, then they will be more demanding. And when we get to the vote, they won't be looking to the Instagram or to the TikTok. They will be looking to the book they read, to the symphony they heard. And so I think that art and sport as well can make that change. And if we do that, and if we invest in that field, that's the payback. It's not the money, it's making people become better humans, and if we are better humans, then we all get along much better, and we vote better. I'm not candidating myself for anything, don't worry.
Well,
I don't have any political affiliation, but I think we can see in the world that people are voting very bad in many countries, and the democracy is losing its strength, and we are all very much afraid of populism. Why does populism happen? Because it's very easy to persuade people that don't read, that don't listen, don't go to concerts, to museums, and so on, to vote in zero, to TikTok vote. And so the next step is just go and put the money, not thinking, oh, this is an industry and we also can profit with restaurants or selling merchandising or whatsoever. Okay, I understand people need to make money. I hope we all make a lot of money, including myself, but there are something bigger than that.
Besides that.
Absolutely.
But you know that next year we'll have the presidential elections, so feel free.
But I'm not candidating myself. I want to keep writing music.
Yes, and you do it quite well, so.
Thank you.
We know that the cultural part and the importance to society is huge in art and sport, but we also know that the economic part has some weight in this. We know that these kind of big events, being music events, art events, festival events in other areas, or sports events, they all impact in our economy, since they can create jobs, they can bring tourists and bring dynamic to our economy. And as a CEO of a hotel group, how do you see the impact of these major cultural events and sports competition on increasing a country's tourist attractiveness? And I don't know if we need more attractiveness, but it is important in general to countries that having these big cultural events or big sports events?
Well, for sure. First of all, thank you so much, Diana, and to the Diaspora Council for hosting this event, and to this excellent panel that we have. Actually, I'm on the other side of the dialogue because I think this is the perfect panel.
It's not. It's a
I don't believe it's a
position.
random panel at all because to the far left we have the arts and culture, and we have the sports, and we have here the music. All you're missing is the infrastructure. And I think that's what completes this panel, right? So, well, myself, I'm Rahim Lakhani. I'm the president and CEO of TLG Global, which is a family office. And here we, in Portugal, but not by chance, actually, it was one
When
of the...
you decided to invest in Portugal, what
Yes.
was your vision about the country and the important... It was not...
Well, I think the thing is, what is more important to remember here is, so I'm from the Indian descent, of course, I'm a Canadian, family is pretty much global, but we were introduced to Portugal because of a large-scale cultural event. Mm-hmm. And it couldn't have been a better introduction to Portugal because...
Which one was it?
In 2018, was the first time we visited Portugal, was the Diamond Jubilee of Aga Khan at Altice Arena. And that event was completely a game changer for us.
It was crucial to you decide to invest.
It changed the entire family dynamics, it changed the entire company dynamics. We were so attracted to Portugal. We've invested, now we are an asset manager over 200 million euros, invested in maybe more than 25 projects in Portugal, and it was simply because of a large-scale cultural event. So thankfully, Portugal embraces this and has the facility and has the appetite for more in terms of what's happening today. I mean, we were just announced, of course, about the 2030 event at a mega scale. I always ask this question, I asked you earlier, are we ready for this kind of event? All the time it's sort of a double-edged sword. We see in many countries when World Cup happens, you have infrastructure being built at a very, very large scale, at a very fast pace. with many different rules and regulations that happen to complete these projects. And I think slowly but surely, Portugal will feel this kind of responsibility as well, now that it's been announced. And many projects will come through with that intention that we will have the whole world's eyes on us. And are we prepared for such infrastructure? I think what is important now more than ever is to be at a competitive stage in the world that is not the way of building that we used to build. So one of the things that we have done and incorporated very well in our hotels is building it more smartly, building it more efficiently, following as much as possible the sustainability rules and logics. So these are very important considerations, and how we can incorporate sports and culture into these infrastructure is more than important, because you can no longer afford to be just a 3-star or just a 4-star hotel. You have to embrace and incorporate.
You have to offer something. You have to know that Gulbenkian has a new center of art, modern art, and is it important to sell besides the accommodation? And
it's no longer renting a room, let's put it this way. If someone is making a booking, they are looking for an experience. And if they don't get in the first time that experience, they will no longer book that hotel room for you. So they will move on and they'll find. So culture, sports, religion, and infrastructure, they have a very good role to play in improvement of the country's economics. And alongside creating jobs and whatnot, we have a huge responsibility of and Portugal itself being such a great leader in terms of what it has done over the last. It has such a huge historical significance. How does our buildings signify that and maintain that? It's a great responsibility for a company like ours.
And can the hotel companies be a kind of a space of sharing new cultures also, because you attract a lot of tourists from all parts of the world? Can it be also a place to share cultures besides renting a room?
No, of course. Of course, it truly depends on the architect that is designing the spaces, and this is the most important job when they can follow the board's vision. So it is very, very important to follow that logic. But now more than ever, if you don't have such spaces, I think it's a huge failure because when you build a structure, these structures are going to stay there for 20, 30 years, and they will be embedded into the economy for a very long time. So if you don't do this today when you are actually developing it, I think it's too late for you.
António, Feijó, we are in EuroAmericas Forum, and I would like to ask you this because the Gulbenkian Foundation has a long history also in supporting artistic exchange. What initiatives do you believe are essential to success of cultural and sporting collaborations between America and Europe, especially when we are trying to target young audiences?
Well, I'll try and answer.
Yes. We can start first in explaining how important has been this role in developing the artistic exchange in Gulbenkian's projects. Was it important to the message that you try to pass to the society?
Yeah. Well, an interesting aspect when we consider art is that people will say, if what you do is in Portugal or in Lisbon, that is not really international. This is an argument I hear a lot of times. Now, this is very peculiar, because if someone goes into a hall, into an exhibition hall, and sees a series of paintings of Canaletto and Guardi of Venice, as we have now an exhibition, this is by definition cosmopolitan. This is by definition international. There are no frontiers. For example, when the Gulbenkian Museum has a collection, which was the collector's choice, that's the art pieces he bought for himself. And according to the terms of the will, this is a finite collection. It can't be added to. Mm-hmm. That is why the foundation, about 40 years ago, decided to create the Modern Art Center. The Modern Art Center was exactly to create a collection which might be added to. And so what the collection is based
Where
on...
you could promote diversity.
Yes. And the mainstay of the collection is contemporary art, Portuguese art for the last century or so. But it also has a very sizable British art collection. And actually, the British art collection is now going to be shown also in a large show. So the notion of international or national applied to art is really useless. In a sense, a particular art piece either adds to a tradition within that context or doesn't. If it does, it is by definition international, because it is at the cusp of what that art form is. So this is really a moot issue. But of course, then we can try and push it, and we have, for instance, the Gulbenkian Foundation has a UK office in London and has a Paris office. The Paris office has been very active in promoting shows at the Pompidou, at Lyon, and so on. And these shows then travel to Lisbon, or not. Some of them do, some don't. But this is also a way of being within the art world. And I'll just give an example. There is a foundation, a very important foundation, the Lakhani collection at Musée de la Marine in Paris. And they had a show of some choice pieces from the Gulbenkian Foundation in conjunction with their own collection. And their own collection is quite wonderful. So this is a way of promoting the dialogue.
It's the dialogue between Europe. But how do you think that we can improve our dialogue, our cultural dialogue between Europe and Americas?
Yeah.
What kind of initiatives can develop that, especially when we try to target these young audiences? Because as Luís was saying, we have to promote and care about democracy also.
Sure. Well, let me give an example of that. In 2000, the Gulbenkian Museum had to close to be refurbished, and a lot of its major pieces were shown at the Metropolitan Museum in New York. And the exhibition was extremely successful, and the title of the exhibition was Calouste Gulbenkian's motto for his own collection, which was "Only the Best." And this created quite a splash in the sense that people recognized that the collection was like that. Well, you can do that in many ways, but sometimes these sort of exchanges. I'm going to give an example which is not artistic, but which I find quite interesting, and that is, at the foundation, at the Gulbenkian Foundation, we have an Armenian unit. And because, of course, Calouste Gulbenkian was Armenian in origin. And this Armenian unit has a camp, a language camp, in which Armenian youth from Lebanon, from France, from the US, get together to improve their language skills. And this is done in the French Alps, in a place, in an institution or a program called Zarmanazan. And so they do it in the French Alps. But recently, last year, they did it in LA, in Los Angeles. And so at some point, you have these Armenian youth learning a language which is endangered because it is the language of the diaspora, and you have them fly to LA and then fly to the French Alps, and this becomes cosmopolitan itself. So I think there are many ways in which this immediately is created.
Let me ask you also this, because when you invested in the new Modern Art Center, the foundation invests 58 million euros, which is a lot of investment. And it's not easy when you have to decide to spend this volume of money. When you consider doing this kind of investment, what is the return that you expect to society and to you are investing, but what are you taking from this to society also?
Well, that is also, I think Luís Tinoco already answered that, but in a way. Let me just go over that, because of course the amount of money has become a small issue. What the foundation did now was, when the Center of Modern Arts was built, the building was not very persuasive. It was unlovely. People thought, this is not very nice. It's not as it should be. It was British brutalism, and it didn't really appeal to everyone. So it had also functional problems, structural problems. It had to be redone. We started redoing it, and in the process of redoing it, we recognized, for example, that it didn't follow seismic legislation. When you do that, and you do that extensively, at some point you're spending a lot of money in that. But not only that.
But now you have a building that almost connects to someone who visits it.
But we also bought the garden to the natural southern limit of the campus, and now we have nearly the whole court, the whole campus, except for a small sliver of land. And we think this is quite a plus. I mean, this is money well spent. We have created a structure in Lisbon which can rival any.
This is what the foundation wants to leave for the future.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Diana, we talked here about the young generations, but we have also to talk about women's emancipation, and in sports that is a very important issue. We usually refer only to politics and business, but the reality is that there are many challenges to women that women face in achieving equal participation in sports events. In terms of leadership, in terms of visibility, what is your experience in that issue?
That's a curious question, because I have two perspectives, very different. The first one is from being an athlete. It was okay, it was normal if I was the only athlete, girl, competing in the national selection with other boys. And I never felt that I was different from them, or if I was negligent, or even the conversations were different because I was there. Everything was normal. I have no trauma, I have no bad memories from that. And everything was really, really natural. Even I think that happened also because it was swimming that happened there, because if we were talking about football, it can be really different between the way they see female football and men football. It can be really different from sport to sport, so I was lucky. I had that reality as an athlete. But unfortunately, I see that the emancipation of women is still being hampered, because if as an athlete I was feeling this, as a leader now, because I'm the president of the Athletes Commission and I'm with a lot of men many times, I feel that my voice is smaller than the men's voices. And I believe that happens.
Your effort is bigger than
it has to
most
be
of the
bigger.
times.
The surprise people get when they see women, and because, for example, in my case, I'm younger than them, it's still a surprise, and it takes longer for me to have the trust and to show my value than it was, I think, supposed to be. It's really, I think that our voice is smaller because we are less, we are few talking. Because
now, can sports be a catalyst for changing that image, that identity, that the way things are at this moment? How can we have more women and change this for the next generation?
I would really like to have the answer to that, unfortunately, but it's I don't know how to say. It's a mean that we have to have. That is the codes. Now we are having codes. At least X% of the panels have to be women, and so on. I think the beginning is that, but in the future, and I'm really happy to see that we have many women in the room, more than I was expecting, because usually it's not like this, but something is already changing in that sense.
Do you think that the sports need to give the example for the whole society?
Of course, and we are already starting to have, but I can give you my personal experience, and it's a very, very recent example. I'm still running as a president of this commission and the National Council of Sports, and I'm pregnant now. And the first reaction people are having is, oh my God, how are you going to manage 3 kids? Do you intend to continue in that position after? And I'm like, why am I having this question? Why? Because I'm the woman? Because I'm the one pregnant? That's quite funny. It's also a distraction sometimes. And I think sports and culture, for me, are flesh and blood. But some things as a culture, globally, have to really change.
Not only sports, everything.
Not only sports, but
change.
Yes.
Luís, in an increasingly digital world, the cultural industry is also exploring opportunities for innovation. It's strange to ask you about this because the kind of music where you compose, it's probably sees innovation as a different factor in your production and in your daily basis. What are the main opportunities that you see for cooperation between Europe and Americas in this theme, and how do you see that we can keep tradition and innovation in something like music and?
Do you give me permission to go back to one thing that Diana said before going to your question? Yesterday I was on the phone with the maestra Joana Carneiro. She's a very good friend, and because of this prize you mentioned, we were on the phone. We are very good friends. And while she was speaking with me on the phone, she was at the same time preparing the bed of her 4 children, which are babies. Not
multitasking.
Yeah, exactly. And she was telling me that she was going to conduct next week something, and she had to take care of this situation with the babies because the nanny was ill or whatever. So she could not be studying from the score at that time, so she was listening to the music, a recording. So she was actually taking care of the babies at the same time studying the score via the loudspeakers. So, and I thought, you are really brave, because this is extremely difficult. On the other hand, I also think I have double feelings sometimes when this issue comes to the front, because in other areas, I think women are far ahead from what we see or normally think that is a man's world. For example, science in Portugal, it's much more strong with women academics and researchers than men. In my field, sometimes people ask me, can you recommend a women composer? And I won't, but sometimes we have fewer, because now with the university degrees and so on, there is something changing in mentalities, and we are getting more women composing.
Yes.
But some years ago, we would have if you had 20 applicants to the college.
Because of these obstacles, you think?
I don't know why. My question is, some years ago, 20 years ago, we would get 1-2 women composers applying for the Lisbon College of Music to study composition. Now we have, last year was the first time we had 50-50s. It was the first time. I've been teaching there for 20 years now, 24 years. So it took a long time. But that was not happening in science, for example. So why in certain fields sometimes you have balance, other fields sometimes we have more men and sometimes we have more women. I don't have the question, but the answer, but I think that we cannot just think this issue on a ground of black and white. You have to see each specifics of each situation.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't want to take much of your time, but to answer
No, we have time. We have 12
Okay.
minutes. Don't worry.
To answer to your question, I think that it's funny because, of course, I'm into classical music. I write music for orchestra and so on. But technology is really very much present today in the music within the written tradition. Normally, when we say classical music, we think about, of course, what comes from Bach, Beethoven, and so on to nowadays. And of course, many people still compose and write music with pen and paper. I do it a lot, but I also use the computer and technologies. And actually, the laptop, in a way, it's a new way of writing today. For the arts, and music is not an exception. So the technology, in many respects, is very much, for example, during the pandemic, people went to concerts because of technology. We were seeing live concerts. We were having the orchestras, the musicians at home, playing each one his own line and then putting things together to make a recording. So,
But do you think that can improve the cooperation between Europe and the Americas, or in the other way can separate because one is moving faster than the other?
well, there is always, I don't think that depends only on technological issues. I think there is a problem of some nations, some economies are stronger, and they, even if they don't use technology, they will always be over-dominant. And Europe has to, of course, use their own arguments. For example, taking the Portuguese example. What can connect us with the Americas? Our language, for example. Portuguese is a very much spoken language. I remember at the Gulbenkian once a conference with a wonderful writer, Mário de Carvalho. He was telling the story that he went to the United States to receive an award that he had been given from a literature academy. And he was very happy because it was a good money prize. And they said, oh, okay, but he didn't know much about the prize. And then before taking the plane to fly to the United States, he decided to read a bit about the prize. And he read that this was a prize given by this American Academy to protect endangered languages of extinction. So Portuguese for them was in danger of extinction. And they said, come on, this is the most spoken language in the South Hemisphere. So this is something that we have to be aware of. We are Europeans, and each European country has centuries of knowledge and capacities. We as Portuguese, for example, we have this wonderful language that we use. And I think that it's not only technology, it's just going back to the basics.
Yes.
What do we have to offer?
Rahim, Lakhani, do you think that the impact of sport and culture on economy is similar in Europe and the United States? We're talking about culture and technology and development of the difference between different countries and different cultures. But in terms of economic impact, do you think it's the same when something happens in one side of the ocean and in the other side?
I think, of course, we know, like we say this in Texas, everything is big and large, right? So there are stark differences. I think it also stems from the culture, how Americas are, and what they believe in basically doing this at a very large level,
But you
very
think
large
that
scale.
In the US, they capitalize more the mass events,
So.
the mass?
Yeah, I think sports culture is very, very different, of course, when you compare US to Portugal. I mean, obviously the size of the country is there. In
Talk
that.
about the US and Europe.
Yeah.
It's different also?
Of course. I think a lot of it has to stem from how we see sports, and I think sports is very much integrated into the cultural system here versus United States. It's very much about entertainment, right? And how you spend your time with, of course, your loved ones or your family and everything. That is the commonality is there. But as Europeans, there is a very different definition to how we enjoy here sports and culture, right? So stark differences. But very inspirational, actually. I'm learning here more on the stage than I think I would have been in the audience. So it's truly inspirational to see this kind of level of greatness that we have here, and the kind of experiences that you have to share, and the insight and the in-depthness of your experiences. So I think it's important to learn, and also as we grow into, I mean, to be very frank, we are into the European system in a short span of 4 years. So I think it's too new still to adapt to the fullest scale and to embrace it. But I think over the last 4 years, it's been a fantastic journey. And the best part is to be able to, look at what our cultural heritage is and what our values are from different parts of the world, and to bring that to Portugal. So when you say Portuguese culture, I think today Portugal is also very much global, and Lisbon specifically is very much global. So I think it's definitely adapting in both ways, not just accepting Portuguese culture, but also accepting international cultures into Portugal, and to embrace that. And also in a certain way, the Portuguese has a sense of responsibility to ensure that, like you mentioned, safety and security, it's the same concept, and how we can do that through sports and culture into the ecosystem here to make everyone feel at home. I think that's more than important, and we are, of course, on our end trying our very best. We come from the Indian culture, so when you tell me sports, I think cricket, you think football. So it's a stark difference, right? Yes. And there is we know now there's a huge immigrant population in Lisbon, in Porto, and how we can mix the two, sports and culture, into embracing the societies that are coming into Portugal and settling in Portugal. And like my son is born here and he's Portuguese, and now we have now I really have this responsibility of making sure that he has 5 different cultures into him, right? So but yeah, again, I think I should tell this to António, that very inspirational, looking at the success of Gulbenkian and what it has been able to do. In fact, so much so that we applied for our own foundation, which is in the process of being approval, of course. But we would like to contribute in a certain way to this greatness that Portugal has, and give the 2 cents that we can bring to society, and learn the language and learn and embrace the culture and add to that culture, right? So. Yeah.
Well, Rahim, thank you. Before entering in the third round, if we have time, we still have 4 minutes. I would like to ask if someone in the audience would like to make 1 or 2 questions to our panel. Please don't be shy. I know it's always difficult. We can proceed, but if anyone wants to ask something. Well, so let's finish our panel, and it's kind of the same question for everyone, because we are living kind of strange times, and we know that culture, sports, and also economy, it's important to integrate and to create kind of global identity and the sense of democracy. Given these many conflicts and the difference in the world, how do you see that culture can, in some way, shape a more just, more inclusive, and more positive future, António? It's very difficult.
How many hours do we have?
Well, we have 3 minutes. So I left the difficult one to the end.
Sure. I don't really know how to answer that.
But it's difficult in this time that we are living.
Sure. But one thing one can say is, for example, talking about sports and culture, there is a lot that unites them, because both take sports. Why do we have sports? We have sports because bodies are not perfect. If bodies were perfect, we wouldn't have sports. Because if bodies were perfect, 11 people on one side, 11 people on the other side, this one would kick, the other one would defend. This one would kick, this one... It would be a tie. So we only have sports because we are fallible, we are always behind what the maximum outcome is. And culture is also a bit that. For example, if you talk to a great creator, and he has a great track record and an extraordinary amount of work before him, and you can see that. For example, I remember an interview with the great filmmaker Billy Wilder at the end of his life. So the interviewer asks him a question about one of his great movies, and Billy Wilder says, yes, but of course my next script, that's the only thing he thinks of, because he hasn't done yet, he's not done. Although he's 80 and no one is going to give him another shot. So we are always behind.
And we always have to improve, right?
And this is a common experience of everyone in our lives.
Yes, and we have 1 minute. We cannot let the time goes by. Diana, how can sports, because sports is a kind of geopolitical weapon also, be important in these times of uncertainty and difficulties that we are living?
Well, I think, and I think we all agree that sport itself, it's inclusive and fair and positive. But the point, and I was saying that before, is that when there are external factors, it can be destabilized or denatured or polluted. So the more external influences there are to sports, the more difficult it can be to understand the representation of your country. And when there is some authority, for example, over it, sport is usually taken by storm. And we have for example, of autocratic regimes where the medals or the victory is added, and the value of it is corrupted. We have countries that dope the athletes and corrupt the system of anti-doping. And it's not the athlete's choice. It's not sports anymore. So where is the spirit around it? So, and to answer to your question about how can culture and sports contribute, and how the countries from Europe and America can contribute to it. And I believe it resides in democracy. It is a guarantee for the sustainability of sport and the spirit and essence of sports.
Luís, it's not just about having a positive future, it's also about defending democracy?
Yes, and about generosity, wanting to share, not only the ones that produce, but the others that receive. There's a feedback process that unites people, separation, capacity to have a self-critic view of what's happening, and everything that Professor Feijó just mentioned. It's a separation that gives, art gives that, and sports as well. So if we do that, I think we can have better prospects.
Rahim, and the economy plays an important role also in the more positive future. It's not just what you have, what you take from economy, it's also what you give. Do you think it?
Of course, but
how do you see a more positive future with all this uncertainty? It's difficult. We have conflicts in the Middle East, in Ukraine, but you have to have results in terms of economic. How can you conciliate all these uncertainties?
This is going to be another
hour. Giving a better future to.
Sports brings hope, of course, but my wife tells me that the only sport I'm good at is slow walking, so so I don't know if I can give any hope there, but definitely it's never about winning and losing in sports, like Senior António was mentioning, and such is in the economy, right? You have these opportunities that is presented in front of you. You can be brave, or you can take the seat back and say, you know what, we'll do a mediocre job. It's definitely, as an ecosystem, as Portuguese, how we want to excel and how we want to reach, so that at an international level we can be, we're remembered for decades and decades to come. This is actually the essence. So the opportunities are available to us here through sports, through music, through culture. Now it is about all of the persons that are in this room together to embrace that and look at 2030 together.
Well, it's a very good way to finish. Well, Rahim Lakhani, Luís Tinoco, Diana Gomes Pedras e António Feijó, thank you very much for being here in this panel. I hope and I think we inspired some of the presence here. It was a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.